It's my understanding that the slogan kind of going into this year is no limits.
No limits, that's right. It came from one of our employees who had actually written a song that was based on our school district's motto, which is a future without limits. And we took it and ran with it, and it's been really fun.
That was kind of something that seemed a little easier to say maybe even in June.
Yeah.
Now we're here late August going into September. Is it still easy to say no limits? Is
You
it
know,
still?
I think last year during the darkest days of the pandemic, our staff proved that there's no limits to what they can do creatively or to connect with kids or within the boundaries of instruction, finding creative ways. And on top of that, our kids coming up with no limits to meet academic expectations. I think it's as true now as ever.
Still, by all accounts, many accounts, in a pandemic, but what is the difference getting into the beginning of this school year versus the beginning of last school year? What's the biggest difference that you see in preparation?
Well, you know, a year ago we had 50% capacity on transportation and in classrooms, which really limited the number of minutes we could see kids during the week. We're entering this year with, well over 90%. 95% of our families want to be in school in person 5 days a week. And so we're preparing for safely having kids in classrooms and monitoring a pandemic that we know a little bit more about this year than a year ago. But what we're preparing for is welcoming kids back and getting them back into a school year and meeting them where they come in and moving them forward again.
We're talking about masks. You had a policy, and then it's my understanding there had to be some tinkering with it here recently. As we start school on the 7th, really explain this so I can understand and
Sure.
so folks can understand the masking policy.
You know, I think in the middle of July, the CDC and the Department of Health and the Department of Education all got together. The Department of Education said, hey, these are health decisions. It's the Department of Health. And the Department of Health turned around and said, we're really modeling after what the Center for Disease Control says nationally. And they said, we're recommending masks in our school settings, vaccinated or unvaccinated. And so immediately our community has said to us, tell us right away whatever you know, even if it's not the final answer. And you know, in a pandemic, you don't ever have the final answer. So at that point in time, we shared we're recommending masks, not requiring them. And at that point in time, the vast majority of metro school districts were either undecided or recommending masks. Then what you saw is cases started climbing and districts started taking their stances on it and saying we're requiring masks K-12 for an extended period of time. And it became clear that districts need to make a decision. How are you going to make this decision? And so we met with county health officials and met with all of my superintendent colleagues and said, what are some thresholds we can clearly communicate to the public that would say this is when we'll have masks, rather than saying from now until November, no matter what. So we worked with the CDC and the Department of Health guidance and state data, and the CDC recommends in their final bullet for schools, use local data to make these decisions. And so we anchored on Minnesota Department of Health county level case data. As soon as we have school data, we can start looking at that too. Our kids aren't in school yet. So we made a decision to look at, the Department of Health has a 6-range level to measure COVID spread in the community. It's 0, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 25, 25 to 50. And we looked at that range and said, at the highest 2 ranges, we'll do masks for unvaccinated kids or K-6 kids. And then if it gets above in that highest range or beyond, we'll certainly consider a 7-12, but only when it's in those peaks. And so that was our way to acknowledge it. We've got a lot of parents who told the board, please give us as much choice as possible or give us all our decision-making ability. So we made a model that tried to acknowledge that.
And so the Department of Health is already putting out these reports. It has been putting out these reports. And so just using this available data to make a week-by-week decision moving forward and looking not school by school like some districts may have talked about, but week-by-week district-wide decisions.
We'd be making them initially district-wide because that's the only data points we have. As we get farther into the school year, as we can show county levels are high and schools have no transmission, that would certainly be a way to say, well, clearly this county level data is in other parts of the county and not in our school system. Parents want the decision to be as local as possible. Don't make a decision about my elementary school in Blaine if it's happening and there's huge spread in Dayton. Mm-hmm. And I completely understand that. We don't have the ability to differentiate out. The county level data doesn't break down by K-6 by city. If it did, we'd use it and we'd say, okay, well, in the city of Ham Lake, K-6 spread is down in the 5 range and we won't require masks. We just don't have that data.
Other school districts around the country have been back in school for almost a month, and a lot of them have had to make real big adjustments of quarantining and shutting down schools for a period of time, are you already looking ahead in case the district has to make bigger decisions like that if spread becomes something really dramatically, on the dramatic end of how bad it could be?
When we were in person last year with masks, K-12, and we had about 30,000 students in school, we followed quarantine guidance and found that, not even 1% of students we quarantined were testing positive. So we know our safety protocols in school are really strong. Even when we have, when we had 30,000 kids in school, we had full classrooms. And so we feel pretty confident that while we're operational, we can monitor spread. We didn't have to close the school last year during the year, school-wide as we monitored spread. We certainly that would be the last thing we'd want to do because our parents tell us loud and clear they want kids in school. But we'll monitor spread. And if there are multiple cases in the classroom, we'll be telling parents this classroom really has multiple cases, monitor your child's symptoms, mask, all those things. So the CDC recommends layers of protection, and we have those layers of protection. Look at local data, look at layers of protection.
Looking forward, does this put on hold, or does this delay, or has this hampered any larger long-term goals maybe 2 years ago that the district had in terms of anything, in terms of expansion or in terms of improving any kind of metrics that the districts are measured by? Has this put a stop or really put a damper on anything?
No. We've been really working on, I'll give a handful of examples. At the elementary level, there's a state recommendation that we support students with their social emotional learning, sort of character ed. How do I monitor myself? How do I interact? We're rolling out some social emotional learning support curriculum across all of our elementary schools to support students with, how do I advocate for myself? How do I help a friend? All those kinds of things. We're doing that this year. Even though we're coming back in a pandemic, we're training our teachers, and it won't be 8 hours a day. It might be 15 minutes a week, but we're moving that into the school system. We piloted new science materials in our middle school science classrooms last year. Those will be new this year. And our teachers were begging for new materials. We're piloting new 9th grade science materials this year because state standards have shifted. So some of those things are moving forward as planned. And our teachers have said, we can do this in this transition, along with really getting much, much better at how to use technology to personalize learning for kids. All those things, pandemic aside, are going to move forward.
How do you address learning gaps if kids were primarily distance or primarily, felt like they were back and forth and maybe they are falling behind? Is there a way to make sure that schools, teachers, departments, whatever the case may be, making sure that students are caught up or get caught up quickly if they were in some sort of disadvantage because of all the maneuvering?
Sure. Well, we start every year with at the elementary level, some formative assessment on math and reading to say, where are you coming back to us? And then we target our resources to support kids based on that fall screening, and we do a measures of academic progress, a MAP testing. And we've been doing that pre-pandemic, and we'll do it now. And that will guide decisions on the kinds of groups you are in a reading class or in math class, as well as the supports you get. In addition, we've added additional intervention support at our middle school and high school, lower class size, to add additional math and reading people to support students either pushing into a classroom or pulling students out of a classroom to get some support. So we're more in tune to where our students coming back to us, and we're really using some of those federal funds to push in intervention along with counseling and social work support. We're trying to bring down our counseling and social work ratios a lot so that people can be in tune with students who are stressed being back in school, or can be in tune with students who are feeling like, I'm not on track to graduate. And we moved our counselor ratio here. We're here at Blaine High School. When I first started, that was pushing up towards 600. We're getting it down closer to 400 if we can. So that 150 fewer students is going to make a difference for that counselor to say, all right, who are my 10% of kids I really need to spend time with? We have a safety net of things in place, whether it be for counseling support, whether it be for academic support, to identify early who needs help and how do we get them back on track. And in all of our high schools, every year we look at, of our seniors, our kids that should be ready the soonest, who needs credit recovery? And we've got unique opportunities for credit recovery. How do we get those kids ready to graduate? And then we work on all the other skills we have, all while maintaining a comprehensive academic program with college and career readiness or career and college readiness.
At school board meetings, we're seeing a lot of emotions. We're seeing a lot of parents with very strong feelings, and in many cases shouting over you and the board members as they deliberate and trying to make public decisions and informed decisions. From teachers, they don't get that opportunity. They may shout at somebody else if they're really concerned about something. Are you Are other district leaders, principals, other administrators listening to what teachers have to say, and how has that even changed since March of 2020? Has it changed in terms of drawing that feedback and engaging and making decisions pandemic related based on what teachers have to say?
So any community member or staff member can email the board or me, and they do. And I would say we get a steady flow, and I think one of the perceptions that is in the community is, well, our teachers are all wanting to take away all this choice from parents. I called our union leadership before the board meeting and said, do you have a stance on this? And she said, I'll be honest, our membership is split. Just like the community, they're split on what the best recommendation is. And so we asked, and we typically hear, but I think the representation in the teacher ranks is very similar to what it is in the community. There's a lot of emotion. Parents want what's best for their kids. And, you know, for people who are concerned about masks, they know that is wearing a mask as social as not wearing a mask? Absolutely not. Is it as comfortable? Absolutely not. So those parents who are advocating for their children not to wear masks, I appreciate that. Very few people, when the pandemic's over, are going to choose to wear a mask, as evidenced by, if you look at the state for other places. So it was with reluctance that we put in those safety measures, but also out of our safety, we've followed CDC guidance forever. We wouldn't stop following it now. And I think that's the hard part for people to connect with.
Do you get any sense that any of the decisions that the board or you and the administration have made are keeping people away? Enrollment down, up, the same?
We went up 50 students the week that the board made that decision. I don't think there's a connection between the two. We are pushing almost 500 over projected enrollment, and we're at Blaine High School. We closed open enrollment at this building previously, Champlain Park High School, Jackson Middle School, many of our elementary schools. Parents are coming back to school as they're feeling more comfortable. So certainly I've interacted with parents who are saying, based on this decision, we're going to look for another option. I get those types of requests every year. I probably have had a handful more this year in the last week. Any educational setting, education is important to me. It isn't my place to judge where I think your children should go. You as a parent know what's best for your kids, and I tell every parent that. I want them to have a great school year. I want them to have a wonderful experience. We're always here for them as a public school system, but really that's a parent's choice where their children need to be educated.
And there's an online learning component. There's an online dedicated academy with staff that there's pretty substantial enrollment for elementary there, right? I would imagine, is that due to those kids can't get vaccinated? Maybe it's a safer, or is it work better for families?
We have offered a traditional 9-12 virtual program going back over 5 years. And we typically have 150, 180 kids that just do better in that environment. And that's their path, whether they're trying to catch extra classes or I'm a professional water skier and I need to connect with my home school district. There's lots of reasons why. I'm going through chemotherapy. The K-8 portion, we haven't ever had enough numbers to substantiate an investment. However, using some federal funds, we can prop that up for this year to see how it works. And as case numbers climbed in our community, we offered up our community another chance to enroll in that virtual option. And we went from probably 30 students per grade to somewhere between 60 and 80 per grade in about a week and a half period of time. And that really is a reflection of those parents wanting that choice. And we're happy that we're being able to offer it. And now we're working through some wait lists, and some people are transferring back to their homeschool now that there's a mask policy. So it's, we're trying to accommodate what parents want. And understanding, I don't think that we'll be masked all year, and I'm hoping we won't be masked too much into the fall. If you look at some models about where this Delta is going to peak, I don't have any idea, but I'm hoping it isn't going to be months.
And possibility of vaccines, more vaccines for those who choose, and then for children, if that eventually, here in maybe a few months, becomes available. Right. We'll leave you with this. What is the thing you're proudest of with your district in this whole situation, and here starting a second new school year in this?
Well, I'll give you two examples. A few weeks before the pandemic started, we surveyed all of our secondary teachers and said, we're considering going one-to-one with technology over the next few years. How ready are you? And about 60% said, I'm nowhere near ready. 3 weeks later, the pandemic hit, and we handed out 23,000 pieces of technology, and the next week we were teaching online, K-12. And those staff rose to that challenge and got better and better and better. And it is really hard. For kids that don't want to be online, it's really hard to stay connected, but I had staff telling me, give me new tips. How do I keep these kids connected? It was a desire from the vast majority of our teachers to find ways to connect with those kids. And that, I mean, that's a point of pride for my staff. For students, there's 100 examples of kids that I was just in my building, and there was a student waiting in the outer office, and I said, hey, how are you here? Can I help you? And he said, I'm here to get a transcript. I'm going to a college and I'm pursuing my dream. I had an internship opportunity with the school district, and that's what I want to do for a living. I'm going to go to this college and get this degree, and then I'm going to go to law school. And that's what we're all about. Tapping into students' interest and creating a career pathway where they're going to be excited. Now, that happened to be a 4-year college. There's as many of those stories, whether it be EMT or law enforcement. That's what the pride in this is that even last year, we have kids leaving our system with those dreams and that confidence to go and try.